Hi everyone, I'm Melissa, founder of MYRetreat, the women's retreat where mindfulness and gratitude meet, and it is my pleasure to introduce to you Ahlia Tillman, the founder of Little Black Buddha. Ahlia, as the founder of Little Black Buddha, offers women help in making career transition and figuring out their next move in their lives and careers. LBB also creates the space to honestly look at the entire picture of one's life by incorporating a life design ethos into the work and programming, advocating wholeness, wellness, and a complete sense of self. She is a RYT 200 certified yoga instructor. Little Black Buddha is currently developing LBB Pathways, which is an app that helps people figure A, what their transferable skills are, B, what industries those skills can be used in, C, how to market those skills, and D, the opportunity to experiment and prototype different career paths. She's currently holding a crowdfunding campaign to raise money to hire developers, so please feel free to donate. Ahlia has navigated 5 successful career transitions over a 15-year period. Prior to starting Little Black Buddha, she was a lead engineer at a Fortune 500 company for 10 years. She has a bachelor's in electrical engineering from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute and a master's in math education from the City College of New York. Ahlia is married to a wonderful and supportive partner, and most importantly, she is a mother of 3 beautiful and bright children, ages 4, 9, and 12. Welcome, Ahlia.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
That is a phenomenal mini resume of your accomplishments, and I know that there is so much to you and your business, and I'm looking forward to diving into it today. So tell us about LBB. Tell us about the problem that you are looking to solve.
So the problem, or actually, I want to step back from the problem, and I'll put you in a situation. So think about I don't know, a life transition that you've experienced. It may have been, your marriage or the birth of a child or serious illness, some big transitional point that has happened for you, and how that point has changed your life. So Little Black Buddha hones in on those points and leverages those points and opportunities, kind of as launching places in people's careers to move forward and provide bigger impact in society.
Got it. Okay. So tell me what it is that is your solution. Why is it that we would want to use your services?
Okay, so service wise, like I said, we take the messy points, because transitional points are typically problematic, messy, and uncomfortable. We take those and we use those points to our advantages, to our advantage, and typically, like we're focusing on careers, of course, but we use those to provide clarity and in a way forward. The software that we're developing does this in a different way, in that it allows the user to explore different pathways. It provides clarity and guidance in a different way, but it allows the user to explore different career pathways and different options that they can pursue, that are often not presented to them in the main path that most people take, whereby they go from high school to college, and then they go and get a job and they progress up whatever ladder that has been predetermined for them.
All right. So I know in a previous conversation when we were talking about the idea of finding a co-founder. I would love to hear, since the last time that we chatted, what's new in that arena, or where you're at.
Where am I at? So I think I'm going to take my time. So I've asked around since we last spoke, and I'm a member of Next Core too here in Rochester, and I spoke to some of the EIRs there to kind of get their opinion, and we talked about it for a while, but his closing, it wasn't an argument per se, but one of the closing things he said was like a co-founder, or having a co-founder is like getting married. And and then when he said that, I was like, whoa, like I kind of need to slow down. So it kind of uh, when it was framed in that way, it led me to believe that it's not a decision that I would take lightly. And I definitely would want to date first, and ask around. And another good point that that was made during that discussion was, like if there are competencies or skills that I feel like I need more support with, then just hire to those skills and those competencies. You don't necessarily need a co-founder um, to fill that gap. Does that make sense?
The analogy that the EIR gave you about it being like a marriage, it gave me a moment. So we've been married 9 years, my husband and I was just thinking, like, well, we got engaged in January and got married in June. I think that's just the way I roll. Like when I see something and I know what it is that I want, I just say, all right, let's get it done. So I think that I probably approach business in that way too. So that's a fascinating analogy and a real life story for me that's continuing on.
Nice.
So as far as a co-founder goes, I've been told that a lot of investors won't take you seriously if you don't have a co-founder. And and I think that's interesting because when I ask the 5 whys, what I'm hearing is that if somebody else is willing to commit, they see your vision, they're following through on it, possibly giving financial backing, you're able to really sell what it is that you're doing to the point where somebody else makes it their vision as well, that's a great advantage. I'll be curious to hear what everyone on the call thinks about that when we get to the Q&A at the end. But that was the feedback that I've received, and I absolutely think that it's beneficial to have a co-founder. And right now, where I'm at, I do not have that candidate, like the candidate, right? But certainly, every connection that we make is the possibility for meeting that co-founder, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So um so I thought about that point a little bit more too. And in talking to other people, somebody brought up the point that from the investor point of view, and I don't, I have not talked to a lot of investors, but just if I were to put myself in those shoes, he brought up the point where the get hit by a bus scenario. So if you were an investor and you put your money forth, and the founder got hit by a bus, then like, it may not work out for that investment. And so if there is a co-founder on board, then there's higher probability that the investment may work. And so I mean, it's like, it's not a terrible way to think about it, but it's a pretty, you know, it makes sense to me. And so I used to be a reliability engineer, and basically it was my job to look at a system and like figure out how many ways it's going to fail, and when it'll fail, what's the probability that it will fail. And the biggest failures that we would try to avoid were the single point failures. Um, and so as a single founder, you also become a single point failure. I guess also, so not like, if we were to like just take it a step further, if you had a team, so not just a co-founder, but more of a team whereby um, the responsibilities of the company and you were more spread out, then that would also mitigate the risk, I think, of that single point failure scenario. I'm of course still a single point failure right now, but you know, eventually, you know, that what I would want to work towards, whether I have a co-founder or like a team, is that if there was a get hit by a bus scenario, some, you know, like this would still move forward.
I hear you. For me, the focus is on that operations manual, right? So everything
Hmm.
that I do, we're in a pandemic, so everything that I do, I need it to be repeatable, and something that somebody else could step in and take it over, especially when you have the mindset of wanting to scale and eventually sell. So so that manual, I guess, at this point is my co-founder, right?
Right,
I mean,
right. That's your
holding that
blueprint.
space, right? Because I am human and I do my best to take care of my wellness, and so far so good. But we don't know what the future holds, and any of us could get sick and not be able to facilitate an event, and always having another opportunity or a plan B uh, seems seems beneficial.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome that you have that you're documenting it, and that you do have a manual that you can so this is the script, and this is the standard operating procedures that we're going by.
Yeah,
Very
I
cool.
was I was on a call with Golden Seeds this week, and the angel investor said to me, we were talking, and I just responded asking, "What is your superpower?" And she laughed. I guess she doesn't get asked that question in that way, but truly, what is your superpower? And she said that it's organization. That's what's
Hmm.
gotten her as far as she gets now, and I definitely believe that. Right. Um, there's not always time to plan and make a plan B and C, but when there is a possibility for it, I think that the organization uh, is is key as much as we can be organized, right?
Right. So I'm curious, is that your superpower as well, or what would you say
Organization.
is it is?
So my superpower is about, that's interesting. So I have one outside of my business, right? Um, Definitely motherhood is my superpower. Um, Within my business, I'm able to use that to connect with the women that I'm supporting, who predominantly are professional women with school-age children. Uh, so connecting and building relationships
Hmm.
is my superpower, and something that I'm needing to use strategically as I build out my business and connect with corporations to get support for advertising for the app, and uh, bringing on their employees to receive benefit from the upcoming app. So it would definitely be connection and relationship building. And you know the reason why I paused. So I was in a call today with the Babson College Wing Growth Lab, and the whole presentation was about this slide, and it said feminine traits, neutral traits, and masculine traits. And on the masculine side, I have a screenshot of it. On the masculine side, the masculine traits were rugged, dominant, strong, rigid, leader, right? And the list goes on. Neutral traits, visionary, energetic, simple, authentic, different, agile. And then the feminine traits, original, free-spirited, charming, trustworthy, articulate, reliable, dedicated. And for me, I see a lot of myself in all three columns. But what I took away from it was, in a boardroom, they're saying that research is telling us that it's not beneficial for you to present with some of those masculine traits, right? However, and I'll get you the research if you're interested. But however, when you're in an investor room, that it is necessary to display some of those masculine traits. And so, of course, it sparked this conversation, this amazing dialogue with people all across the spectrum, right? But what I took away with was, number one, that neutral list. That's how I'm going to be describing female founders when I'm talking to anyone. I want to make sure that I'm identifying, people who are intelligent, candid, however it is. I want to make sure that when it's true, that's how I'm describing you and your business. And then as far as the masculine traits go, they were talking about assertiveness, projecting your voice, body language, and then expressing your confidence, right? And I don't see anything wrong with doing that, but I certainly wouldn't go outside of who I am.
I think what authenticity was on the neutral list, right?
It was.
So I think being whoever it is that you are is probably utmost important. If you try to pretend like you're something else or someone else, I think that usually comes through pretty loud and clear. And then of course, then there's the lack of connection if you're inauthentic. So
it made sense to me. It was just new information, that dichotomy between the boardroom and the investors room. So tell me about getting your first customer. I would love to hear about what that was like.
So okay, so we'll say there's two first customers. I was my first customer, and then one of my good friends from college was kind of like my beta test bunny. But my experience, so everything that I'm doing right now was sparked by I came to a point in my career where I was being asked to do something that was not it was not in alignment with how I wanted to be in the world and what I wanted to put out into the world. And that kind of like set me off into this whirlwind of not quite an existential crisis, but definitely the transitional point that I was telling you about, whereby, like work became a very difficult place for me to be. And I still love my job. Like I still love, Excel sheets, right? They're great. And I like the people that I worked with, but it was the end product that was not working for me anymore. And so like just figuring out what to do next with my career and figuring out where I fit in and what I want to do in the world and what kind of impact I want to make was super difficult for me because up until that point, I had more or less, I'd been an engineer. And, you know, and not only that, I was like, you know, a Black female engineer. So that doesn't happen often. Um, so that was, for some people, your career and your job title becomes your identity. It wasn't my only identity, but it was kind of what I did. And so when that got taken away, it was like, okay, now what? And so figuring out the next move and how to get to where I want to be took several years. But in going through that, I was able to develop the framework and the process and the tools rather that I can use in my coaching practice, and that I'm now like putting into an algorithm in the software. So I was the original first customer, and then one of my friends was also having a difficult time at work, and I was like, well, hey, you know, why don't you try this value assessment, and here's some other stuff. And she was able to work through it in a very methodological way. And I think it was at that point I was like, oh, you know, like, and she was able to do it so much faster than I was. I was like, oh, okay, this is something that I can probably like package up and start, you know, giving out to other people. And so that's what I did. That was my launching point.
That's an awesome story. Thank you. I hadn't heard that before. I appreciate you sharing that.
No, no problem.
Tell me about your either your first hire or what talent you would like to hire next.
Oh, that I mean, I don't even know who was my first hire. So, you know, of course, right now I'm doing a lot of contract work, so I'm just contracting out. Um, I don't know who was my first hire. I will tell you about my assistant that I have now, and what I'm doing with him is developing him. Like he kind of has an employee development plan, but he was one of my students. So I taught at MCC for a couple of semesters. And that was also part of kind of like the spark with the software, is that, okay, these 18 to 24-year-olds could really use some guidance and some other ways of some other input into how they can develop their careers and earn a living and build a life. Anyway, so he was one of my students, and he is reliable and sharp and capable. Um, and that's why he's you know, he's responsive. So that's why I approached him with the job. He didn't have all the skills. Like, he's not like my dream digital marketer. But he's learning, and he's actually like, he learns to the point where he's actually showing me like where missteps could be made. And so he's picking up pretty quickly. So I wouldn't, all this to say is that I wouldn't hire a digital marketer because I think he's got that covered. And initially I wanted to hire a salesperson. But I'm realizing also that I need to vet out the market myself and close a couple of sales on my own before I can pass that job on to somebody else. So and I just hired a developer today for the software. So we have to sign the contract. I'm not sure who I would hire next. Probably somebody to do research, like some more psychological research to complement the algorithms that we're working into the software. I don't know if that was a very roundabout answer. Yeah,
that was great.
Okay.
Well, congratulations on the new hire. And when you described your virtual assistant, some advice that I was given recently about my board of advisors is to always bring on the people who are uber passionate and that are brilliant. Like those are the two key factors. And it sounds like it's not about knowing how to do it, but being motivated to do it and knowing how to solve problems. Like the problem solvers are who I want on my side and in my team.
Yeah.
And you talked a little bit about that when with your previous work and identifying what could go wrong, right? This bus analogy, which now is going to be in my mind. But the way that it was described to me was around like landmines, right? So you're heading to launch day, and there's all these landmines out ahead of you, and they're there, and there is a possibility that you could walk right around all of them. There's also a likelihood that you could step on one. And so, what are those? So that when it happens, they're all really violent analogies, but when that happens, planning for it, right? Planning for how you were going to resolve that. And one of the conversations that I had recently with my husband around that. So if a landmine is the app drops and all 1 million people sign up for it immediately, right? Absolute best case scenario. Then what am I going to do with that problem, right? So it's a really good problem, but it's still faster than I am anticipating my business will scale. And he just said, this is how I can support. This is, what I would put in to help, and this is how you could then focus 100% of your energy on the business. And those kinds of conversations are what helps me to see those bigger picture, right, of the best case scenario problems and the worst case scenario problems, because I don't have a crystal ball, but we all know the possibilities are out there, and if we plan for them, that we'll have a rule book.
Okay.
Yeah. So what would be your best case scenario with your app launch or the next big thing happening in your business? What would be your best case scenario?
My best case scenario. I have not thought that through, honestly. I guess one of my superpowers is that I'm very, I guess I'm very agile, like in the moment. And so I'm able to kind of like react and respond as I move through the process. So I guess best case scenario, like the development goes really well, which in my experience that doesn't always happen. And I have customers signed up already. I'm going to have it beta tested on a couple of college campuses, and it's rolled out for the fall semester 2021. And from there, we just kind of keep rolling and building up more and more customers and workforce development programs. I definitely want, I would like to see this in workforce development programs as well. And there's like several larger workforce development programs. So if I get buy-in from those programs and those organizations, then I'll be doing really well. And like the pipe dream is to get it into nonprofit, in the nonprofit world as well, to get it to people who are more underserved by these workforce development programs, who don't always have access to career development or other options.
Understood.
Mm-hmm.
So how can our Startup Grind community support you?
right now.
Right now.
Well, I'm always open to having conversations and getting wisdom and advice um, from individuals who definitely have more experience than I do. I who was I talking? I was talking. I did a podcast today, and one thing I've learned as an entrepreneur is that basically you do everything, and there's nothing luxurious or glamorous about being an entrepreneur or um, you running a startup, even because like the way you run a startup is so vastly different than how you run a company. And in that transition, we like I'm telling you, everything is all about transitions, but the transition from startup to company and making that as smooth as possible. I would love to know how that happens. And I'm guessing it happens in many different ways, depending on all the variables and the landmines, as you just said. But yeah, the short and quick ask is, today, can you all donate to the campaign? I think both myself and Melissa are running crowdfund campaigns right now. So on the same platform too.
Same one. Great. iFund Women.
Yeah. So I'm curious. So one hiccup that I'm finding with iFund Women is that and I think I finally figured it out. When people go to donate on iPhones, uh, the browser is preset to Safari, and for some reason, Safari does not like PayPal. Are you having or seeing that problem?
I have not heard that problem, but I have PayPal and Stripe.
Yeah, I
So
have both of them.
oh,
But I think people prefer PayPal for some reason, which is interesting. Um, but yeah, so there's like, I would love for the donation of funds to be as simple and smooth as possible. But I have found that is not as smooth as I would like it to be. So I was just curious, now that I have the opportunity to talk to somebody using the same platform, if you've run into that problem.
well, I have a great connection, so I can give you their contact information for
Okay, please do.
quick, easy fixes. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll do that right after this call. So we definitely want to open the floor for questions, and I'd love to hear those questions in the chat. I have it open, so I can ask whatever it is that needs to be asked. The last question that I have for you is, what is your favorite product or service in Rochester, New York, where we are right now?
Okay. I forgot that was going to be asked, and I never stopped to think of the answer. So, because I was born and raised in Rochester, I would love to say Boss Sauce.
All right.
I was raised on that, right? But we are now vegetarian, and I have not had Boss Sauce in like 20 years or something. I don't know. So let me think about right now.
There's nostalgia to it, right? I've seen that
Yeah,
there's cotton candy flavored. If I'm mistaken,
that's
somebody please tell me. But I'm pretty sure I saw that there was a cotton candy flavored Boss Sauce, which I have not tried, so I cannot judge. But I also haven't tried it yet.
I am a fan of. I think there's an Ithaca hummus, but that's not Rochester.
That is not, and it is good hummus.
Yeah, I guess. So can I say restaurants then? At least does that work?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Owl House in Redfern. I will give them a shout out.
Nice, nice selection. Great. So we've got our first question. Dennis is asking, you were your first customer, and we know what you've been up to. If it's not too private, I'd be curious to hear where your other first customer friends started. What were the learnings, discoveries, and what happened after?
Okay. We tried to so she is she's kind of like an IT director or manager at a major financial institution. And in the project and space that she was in was toxic, and the customers were not great, and it was just all around not working for her. So what were the learnings discovered? Okay, so like I said, so my baseline, the first thing I ask anybody to do is to do like a value assessment. What's important to you? And and that kind of like gives you a baseline for, in my mind, it gives you a baseline for how, what decisions you make and how you want to move forward, basically. So when you move forward, you want to be in alignment with those values. And so kind of like just being real honest and real serious about the values. Um, and I do a lot of work around, and that was why I was curious about Melissa's superpowers. So I work on superpowers and strengths and gifts. I define them slightly different. Like superpowers really are kind of like what would you put on your resume, and like what sets you apart from um, other people vying for a position or a job. The gifts are kind of slightly different. They're more like a part of your story. What part of your story makes you different and unique? So I had a client who just got her green card. So she knows how to now navigate the US immigration system, which is a differentiator. And and so that is also a discriminator. So we just like start building on talents and strengths and skills, and then also personal stories. And then we use that along with the values to kind of like get very clear and serious about like what would work for you moving forward. Instead of like just casting a wide net, I kind of like narrow it for people, and help them to make decisions based on like what would really work for you moving forward.
Thank you. Matt is asking, I see that you are very interested in the future of education. What do you see as the future of educational pathways, curricula, and do you believe that efforts like yours point to a need to emphasize entrepreneurship or trades in a modern education practice?
Yeah, I do. I think, and I'm like, that is almost an upside to the pandemic and remote learning, and that we're forced to change the way that education works and is implemented in the U.S. Um, so I didn't get to tell you like my whole story, but I've taught at MCC, and I've taught high school in Harlem and in New Orleans, and much of the K through 12 education system and even college is geared towards a 20th century economy. And we're in the 21st century. It's very information based. A lot of stuff is becoming automated. A lot of our jobs are becoming automated. There's AI everywhere. So we have to come up with new ways to like differentiate ourselves. And that's kind of where the soft skills and the strengths and the superpowers come in. That's what is going to set you apart from a machine, right? Your stories, your humanity. And so I think it needs to change in a big way. And even now, I think most recently, the statistics are something around like 60% of the US population does not have a bachelor's degree. And K through 12 education, once again, is geared towards pushing the students out to college. And if 60% of them are not going to college, then what where are they going? You know, like you just kind of push them out of school and then they fall off a cliff, or they just figure it out. And I think that that might be a little bit of a disservice.
As the next question rolls in, I'll just share a story that when it was time for me to pick a school, I hadn't given it much thought. And so I was given this book of liberal arts schools, and I flipped it to 3 pages and applied to those 3, right? And I got into all 3 and chose the one and made it to my master's, you know. However, after I graduated with my master's, I asked my mom, you know, did you think that this was the path I was going to take? And she was like, oh, when I bought you that book, if you didn't apply to colleges, I was going to send you to go be a plumber or an electrician. And I was like, I'm a social worker now. I make like $35,000, you know, how in the world did you not send me to the trades? Because you can make the money and then you can actually focus on what your interests and talents and innovation mindset is, right? I was selling toothbrushes to kids on sleepovers. I've always wanted to sell things to people. We have the next question. So when so there's that story. Doug asks, when did you decide it was time to start your business and quit your day job, and what motivated you to do so?
Okay. That is a great question. So I had started working on this while I was working, right? I think I just quit. Like I had a plan. My husband and I had come up with a plan, like a 6-month plan. And I do this all the time, unfortunately. We laid out a plan, and I think it was supposed to be, I can't remember all the dates. Let's say it was a 6-month plan. But we got to take a vacation and go to California. And I will say this to anybody: if you're trying to like work through a hard problem, like removing yourself from the environment will definitely bring you clarity. So I went to California and I quit on vacation, and uh, and went full bore on this. My husband, you know, as entrepreneurs, I think we're talking to an entrepreneurial audience. Like, you definitely want your partner to be on board with whatever it is that you're doing, and you know, getting my husband to understand that you know, going for it now versus 6 months from then, it it made a difference for me. But in the big scheme of things, like the plan and everything didn't have to happen exactly the way we laid it out. So I don't know, the good California weather motivated me to kind of jump ship. That nice beach, the Pacific Ocean.
I just heard on the drive home from my work that there are a lot of airlines that have empty seats for Thanksgiving. So opportunities there, right? There's space for us on airplanes should we
There
choose
is.
to go to California. Right. So I would love to ask the next question. Matt says, do you believe Rochester, New York is ready for the potential of unconventional, non-corporate career paths? Or do you feel we struggle under the conventional educational factory model?
Um, yes and no. So there are definitely a lot of people who are forging their own paths here in Rochester, New York. I mean, like, we have like a cereal bar. Who would have thought that would be a thing? We do struggle under the conventional model. I do agree that that is a model that we're struggling under, but I think that, like I said, the pandemic is forcing us to be a lot more creative than we have been in the past. Like, so my daughter, um, my oldest daughter, she's 12, and like they're learning social studies and Minecraft, and I'm not quite sure that that would have happened if they weren't, you know, in an online environment. Um, so they're being forced to be creative in different ways, and even in Minecraft, that's like, you know, I think it's building your own world and making your way for yourself. And so in some small way, it's almost teaching an entrepreneurial way of being. I don't know if the kids know that or not, but and I doubt they're telling them that. But um, yeah, so I think there's potential to kind of change and shift things.
I,
Can I here? I don't know if we're allowed to talk, but I'm going to anyway.
Okay.
Oh, great conversation. So I want to give you some stats from Crunchbase about soul entrepreneurships, because I think it's important, because
Okay.
even a lot of investors had, you know, the point that you brought up, they're always trying to push you to get a co-founder. Well, this is a survey of 6,000 businesses that reached $10 million in funding. Okay, so these businesses reached 10 million in funding. And it was interesting that slightly less than half had only one founder. So 45.9% that reached $10 million in funding only had one founder. And then the number of startups actually decreased for every founder that you added. So with two founders, it was 31.9% of the 6,000 companies had two founders. So sole founders, actually, if somebody's trying to talk you out of being a sole founder, it's actually, you know, they're actually doing a disservice. That it's okay to you could be very successful as a sole founder. And actually 3 founders yielded only 15. So out of the 6,000 companies, only 15% reached 10 million in funding with 3 founders. The more founders you have, the less success they had trying to raise over $10 million.
I don't know the stat either, but there was another, and I don't know the stat, but a reason why startups fail is also because of discrepancies between the founders and their vision. And I could see, you know, like if you have three people arguing versus 2 people arguing, I can see
Yeah,
it becoming a bigger and bigger issue.
Don't be afraid to go alone if that's the way, you know, your path, you know, lights up. So you just, you know, if you don't find a co-founder, probably means that you're going to actually raise a lot more money.
all right, Doug, what do you have to share?
Yeah, I was just curious on the profession versus identity piece that Ahlia mentioned. I think that's a huge one. And I think, like, you know, when I grew up, like, that was my folks, that was their thing, right? Like, you know, my dad's a doctor, and like he like never stops being a doctor, and it's super annoying. Like when you're watching a show, who like that's not how it is, or like, you know, my father-in-law was RPD, and like he'll watch Law and Order and be like, you can't do that. Yeah, I'm just curious, you know, if for you, Melissa, or Ahlia, you already mentioned it, but sort of what was the moment where you realized that your profession no longer defined your like identity, if you will? Because that was a big point for me too. Just, you know, I thought that, you know, being an engineer meant like that was my thing. But then, you know, if I woke up tomorrow and I won the lottery, like I'm probably not going to keep working. So, you know, who you are as a person and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Do you want to go first, Miss?
No, please.
Melissa? Okay, so I'll try to, if I can sum it up. I think that and it's hard to know like what your life purpose is, but if you have a good understanding of the impact you want to make on the world, it doesn't really matter how you do it. Well, I mean, you have to do it legally, but you know, if I'm an engineer and I want to change the world, I can change the world through a lot of different mechanisms and tools, but I can do the same thing if I am an entrepreneur or an investor, or, you know, like there's so many ways and opportunities to make the impact that you really want to make, regardless of the job title that you have. And just like understanding and knowing that changed the game for me.
I went into social work with the same passion that I had coming out. So I don't feel like I was trained to be a social worker. I chose the profession not to be a one-on-one therapist, but because I wanted to learn about motivational interviewing. I wanted to learn about supporting people through stressors in life. And I wanted to position myself to be a leader. And I don't think that that's what most people go into the School of Social Work desiring. But my internships were at the state capitol in Wisconsin and at the United Way, and it was very strategic so that I could learn how to use those skill sets in those arenas. And so I absolutely just get to use that word, social worker, that title, those letters, LMSW, because it gets me indoors that I wouldn't get otherwise. And I'm still the same person with the same vision for creating change and helping communities find a new worldview. There is another question from Tom. I heard that your platform is focused on values to feed your algorithms. Is there any input sources taking into account people's communication styles?
No, not in this iteration. It's something I can consider in future iterations, but not this one. And I think Matt had another.
Yeah, I did. I didn't want to ask questions live, but you're doing a great job fielding live questions. So I guess I'll tag on to what Doug and Steve did and kind of breaking the rules, because that's what those two guys do. Just
Why not?
I'm just kidding. So yeah, I heard you say a little bit in your response to Doug that it's hard to identify or know your purpose, but sometimes you can find the impact that you want to have on the world. And I take a lot of note when people start talking about things like purpose and the impact they want to have on the world. And I wondered if you have a thought on the impact that you would like to have on the world, and whether your business is well aligned to your personal statement on the impact you'd like to have.
Yeah. Let me see if I can answer your questions. Are very good questions. Let me see. So my biggest desire is to have a positive impact on society, but I think positive impact means a lot of different things for different people. But the way I see it is that, at least let's say the coaching business or the coaching practice that I have, by working with powerful women who are kind of stuck, and helping them to figure out what and how, what their next step will be, and getting clarity in that allows me to, I kind of see it as propagating an impact. And so by having reach, or what's the word? I feel as though like with the software as well, like I'd be propagating a positive impact onto the world. So it's not just my own impact, but it would be a positive impact that would propagate out through other people. That
Like a ripple effect. Excellent. Yeah. So I have my final question for you as we're wrapping up now, and that is, what is the one thing, if we take away one message that you'd like for us to hear tonight, what would you like us to take away about your business and about what you're doing as a founder?
I don't. Let me see. Usually I'm talking to other professionals. I would say, don't give up, or don't let it get you, you know, something like that. But that's not the message I think I would want to give everybody in this room, because you're all either entrepreneurs or investors. I guess in the overall message for the takeaway that I'd like to leave you with is, you know, just be open to change and different ways and methods of doing things. Open to new possibilities.
That sounds like it's the descriptor for LBB, right? New possibilities for your clients. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing this time with us. I appreciate you.
Oh, no problem. I appreciate you too.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Ahlia. Thanks, Melissa. Thanks,
Great
everyone.
job. You did a great job. We're a tough room sometimes. You did a great job. If we want to connect with you or follow up afterwards, is that something that you'd be okay with? And
yeah, I'll just put my email in the my email, so you can just contact me that way.
we'll look forward to any future communication. Very nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you too.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All
Have a
right.
good night.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.